This episode is short, like really short. 1 minute you're watching an opening flashback that's deliberately uncomfortable and kind of ridiculous. And the next thing you know, Dunk is sitting by the fire with Egg at the end of the episode, clearly shaken and trying to make sense of what just happened. It almost feels abrupt, like the episode ends before you expect it to. But the weird thing is, even with how little time it has, a lot actually happens here. What Dunk is really trying to do in this episode isn't to win a fight or impress anyone. He's just trying to be taken seriously as the man he already believes he is. So he spends most of the episode being ignored, dismissed, or treated like he doesn't matter. And then there's this one interaction earlier in the episode that changes his entire situation. Not because he suddenly proves he's a great knight or because he wins anything, but because Baelor Targaryen decides to actually listen to him. And that decision ends up carrying way more weight than anything Dunk does with a sword in this episode. What Dunk is trying to do this episode. So for most of this episode, Dunk isn't chasing glory or trying to prove he's some secret prodigy. He's just trying to solve a very basic problem. He needs someone, anyone, with enough standing to say, yes, this man was a knight squires, and yes, he's allowed to be here. That's it. And the way he goes about it is almost painfully simple. He walks from tent to tent, house to house, repeating the same story about Ser Arlan of Pennytree. He talks about where Arlan served, who he fought beside, and the wars he lived through. Not to impress anyone per se, but because that's all he has. Arlan's name is the only proof Dunk can offer, but every time he brings Arlan up, he gets the same reaction, which is blank looks and somewhat polite confusion. People who should remember him don't, and the pattern becomes clear pretty quickly. It doesn't matter what Arlan did or how long he lived or even how many battles he survived, because the thing is, if you weren't important enough or connected enough, you just disappear. That's what this stretch of the episode is really doing. It keeps showing Dunk failing in small ways, doors closing gently instead of slamming, and respectful dismissals instead of outright cruelty. And each one chips away at the idea that effort alone is enough. So by the time Baelor enters the picture, Dunk isn't riding in on hope anymore. He's running out of options. What makes it worse is that Dunk isn't being dismissed because he's lying or causing trouble. He's calm, respectful, and he does everything the right way. But the moment it becomes clear that he doesn't come attached to a powerful name or a recognizable legacy, he fades out of the conversation. The lords aren't cruel to him. They just don't see a reason to care. And that's the pattern the episode keeps reinforcing. Dunk isn't treated like a threat or a nuisance. He's treated like background noise, like someone who exists on the edges of the event rather than inside it. So even when he talks about things like real history, battles fought, or service rendered, it all slides off because none of it carries weight unless someone important remembers it. So by the time he's turned away again and again, it's clear that this isn't about Ser Arlan specifically. It's about how the system works. And if your name doesn't echo in the right rooms, your story might as well not exist. And Dunk is learning that the hard way in real time, one painful dismissal after another. Baelor's role in all of this. When Dunk finally ends up in front of Baelor, the shift is subtle at first. There's no big speech or dramatic pause, but it just feels different almost immediately. The first difference is that Baelor actually lets Dunk finish talking. That alone sets him apart from everyone else Dunk has spoken to so far. Dunk starts the same way he always does. Who he is, who Ser Arlan was, and what he's asking for. But this time, he isn't cut off halfway through. Baelor doesn't glance away or rush the conversation along. He listens long enough for the full picture to land. Then there's the second difference, and this is the one that really matters. Baelor remembers Ser Arlan, not vaguely or in a that name sounds familiar way. He remembers him as a man he fought. He remembers the tournament, and he remembers the encounter clearly enough to test Dunk on it, asking for details that only someone close to Arlan would know. And when Dunk answers correctly, Baelor accepts it. What's important here is how Baelor asks his questions. He isn't trying to trap Dunk or embarrass him. He's trying to verify the truth. There's a huge difference between those two things, and the episode makes sure we can feel it. This isn't a lord flexing his status. It's someone making sure he understands what actually happened. And for the first time in the episode, Dunk isn't being talked at. He's being spoken with. Baelor even acknowledges Arlan's character, recalling him as a solid, stubborn opponent. Not a famous knight or a celebrated hero, but someone real. Someone who earned respect in the moment, even if history didn't bother to keep his name alive afterward. That recognition alone does more for Dunk than all the polite dismissals he's received up to this point. Nothing about this exchange is loud or showy. Baelor doesn't praise or elevate Dunk. He also doesn't promise him a future. He simply treats Dunk's story as something worth taking seriously. And in a system where Dunk has been invisible all episode, that basic acknowledgement works like a shock. This is the first time Dunk isn't being measured by what he lacks, which is his name, his status, and his connections, but by what he knows and what he's lived. And that's why this interaction cuts so sharply against everything that came before it. Why Baelor remembers Arlan. Baelor remembering Ser Arlan isn't a coincidence, and I don't think it was because he was just being kind. It's the result of how Baelor moves through the world. Earlier in the episode, we've already seen the pattern. Nobles don't remember Arlan because, to them, he never mattered. He wasn't famous or won any grand titles. He didn't even leave behind a legacy that benefited powerful houses. So his name slid out of memory the moment it stopped being useful. But Baelor operates differently. When Baelor says he remembers Arlan, it's not because Arlan was important in the way Westeros usually defines importance. It's because Baelor remembers people he's crossed lances with. Tournaments aren't pageantry to him. They're moments of real contact. And if someone stood across from him in the lists and held their ground, that immediately registered. That tells you a lot about Baelor right away. He doesn't catalog names because of bloodlines or banners. He remembers encounters, effort, and resistance. So who actually showed up when it mattered? That's why his questions to Dunk aren't about mocking or trying to embarrass him. He's checking something specific, whether Dunk knows the kind of details only someone close to Arlan would know. Not through gossip or hearsay, but through actual lived experience. And when Dunk answers correctly, Baelor doesn't hesitate. What's important here is that Baelor never frames this as an emotional moment. He doesn't romanticize Arlan, or talk about honor in flowery terms. He just treats Arlan as what he was, a solid, stubborn knight who wasn't famous, but wasn't nothing either. And I find that distinction very important. Because in a world where status determines memory, Baelor's memory runs on participation. If you stood in the ring, or took the hit, or even if you held your line, that earned a place in his mind. And it doesn't matter if history didn't bother to write your name down. So when Baelor remembers Arlan, he's not reaching backward out of nostalgia. He's applying the same standard he's always used. And that's why this moment is very important for Dunk. Because for the first time in the episode, Arlan isn't dismissed as irrelevant. He isn't reduced to a hedge knight nobody remembers. He's acknowledged as someone who existed, fought, and earned respect in a moment that mattered, even if that respect never turned into status. And because Dunk is carrying Arlan's story, that recognition transfers, not as a favor or charity, but as a logical conclusion. So think of it this way. If Arlan was real, then Dunk's claim is real too. Baelor versus Maekar. What really sharpens the Baelor moment is that the episode doesn't isolate it. It puts Baelor right next to Maekar and lets the contrast speak for itself. Maekar's presence is heavy the second he enters a scene. He doesn't ask questions or issue judgments. When Dunk speaks, Maekar doesn't listen for meaning. He listens for mistakes. His responses are clipped, impatient, and already decided before Dunk finishes a sentence. Dunk isn't a person to him. He's a problem standing too close. You can see it in how Maekar reacts to Dunk even existing in the space. Dunk's size, his lack of polish, and his uncertainty. All of it registers as disrespect in Maekar's eyes. Not because Dunk has done anything wrong, but because someone like Dunk isn't supposed to be here at all. Baelor, by contrast, doesn't treat authority like a weapon. Where Maekar closes the conversation down, Baelor opens it. Where Maekar assumes deception, Baelor checks the facts. And where Maekar treats memory as something beneath him, Baelor treats it as a responsibility. And I find that difference very interesting, because both men have power, but only one of them uses it to understand what's in front of him. The key thing is that Baelor never undercuts Maekar openly. He doesn't challenge him, he just pays attention. And in doing that, he exposes how arbitrary Maekar's contempt really is. It's about how each man sees the world. Maekar sees hierarchy first and people second. Baelor sees people first and then figures out where they belong. And that is, if they belong at all. For Dunk, standing between them, that difference isn't theoretical. It's the difference between being dismissed outright and being allowed to exist long enough to be understood. And this episode makes sure we feel how rare that is. I am his legacy. The episode ends on a personal reckoning note, and that's very important. We see Dunk and Egg by the fire, and by this point, Dunk has put the pieces together. Arlan wasn't famous. Arlan also didn't leave a name that people remember. Most of the nobles Dunk spoke to couldn't place him at all, and some never even tried. That realization hits Dunk hard because up until now, he's been carrying Arlan like proof that he belongs, and proof that this life meant something. And the episode forces him to confront the uncomfortable truth, because by the standards of this world, Arlan left almost nothing behind. But that's not where Dunk lands. What Dunk realizes by the fire isn't that Arlan failed. It's that remembrance and worth aren't the same thing. Arlan mattered to him. He raised him, taught him how to live. And the fact that the world forgot Arlan doesn't erase that. It just exposes how narrow the world's memory really is. That's why the line, "I am his legacy," is very important. Dunk isn't claiming a title or rewriting history. He's saying that if Arlan's life didn't echo outward, it still echoes forward, through him and through the way he moves, the way he fights, and the way he treats people. And this loops directly back to Baelor. Baelor's choice earlier in the episode wasn't about generosity. It was about recognition. He was the only one who treated Arlan's past as something real. Not because Arlan was important to history, but because he mattered in a moment that Baelor remembered. Now Dunk understands what that meant. Baelor didn't just vouch for him, he proved that Arlan's life wasn't invisible to everyone, that someone saw him, and that's enough for Dunk to stop chasing remembrance and start carrying it himself. So by the end of the episode, Dunk isn't asking the world to remember Arlan anymore. He's decided to be the reason Arlan's life meant something. What this sets up going forward. By the time the episode ends, Dunk hasn't won anything yet, but something important has changed. He now has permission to be here because one person actually took him seriously. But more than that, Dunk finally understands why he's doing this. He's not riding into the tournament to become famous, or to prove he belongs among nobles, and he's certainly not chasing status the way everyone else is, because now he's entering with a purpose. Baelor's decision gives him the opening, but the campfire scene gives him the reason. Dunk isn't trying to become something new. He's trying to carry something forward, and to show that Arlan's life didn't end unnoticed just because history forgot about him. So when Dunk steps into the lists, he isn't just another hedge knight hoping for a miracle. He's someone who knows exactly what he's standing for, even if no one else does yet.